Imagine for a moment what you would do if, in the happiest moment of your life, when you bring three beautiful and healthy babies into the world, you were treated like a traitor, like someone who committed a crime simply because of the color of your children's skin. This is the real and devastating story of a woman who was humiliated, rejected, and expelled from her own home after giving birth to triplets, white-skinned and blue-eyed, even though she and her husband are both black. But what no one knew was that 10 years later, something absolutely unbelievable would happen, something that would change everyone's life forever. Welcome to the channel, Historias do Branco, where we share moving stories that touch the heart and make us reflect on life, love, injustice, and the power of truth. If you enjoy deep stories that stir emotions and help you see the world with new eyes, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the Historias do Branco channel, tell us from which city you're watching, and share this video with someone who also needs to hear this story. And if you watch until the end, get ready. The final revelation is the most powerful of all. Now take a deep breath and come with me. It all began in a humble town in the countryside. Leticia and Samuel met when they were young in a social program for underprivileged youth. Both black, dreamers, and full of faith in the future, they fell deeply in love. Samuel was calm, hard-working, and always respectful. Leticia was charismatic, sweet, and had a sparkle in her eyes that brightened everyone around her. They got married in a simple ceremony, but full of love, surrounded by friends and family. Everything seemed to be leading to a happy life, until one of Leticia's old dreams began to come true. She got pregnant, but it wasn't an ordinary pregnancy. In the first few weeks, doctors discovered she was expecting triplets. The joy was overwhelming. Samuel cried when he heard the heartbeats of the three little hearts in one of the first ultrasounds. The entire community celebrated the news. The couple was deeply loved. Leticia's mother-in-law, Mrs. Jacira, although with a tougher heart, also showed happiness, at least at first. The prenatal care went well. Leticia was careful about her health and followed all medical advice. Samuel worked overtime, cut expenses, and held down 3 jobs to ensure his wife and future children had everything they needed. When the big day arrived, Samuel's eyes were filled with emotion. At the maternity hospital, he waited anxiously in the waiting room, praying as Leticia was taken for a scheduled C-section. Minutes later, the silence was broken by the vigorous cries of 3 babies. 3 boys, all healthy. But something unexpected caught everyone's attention. The babies were white, very white, with sky-blue eyes. Leticia, still under anesthesia, noticed the strange reactions from the nurses and the doctor. There was silence and exchanged glances. Samuel, outside, began to worry about the delay in seeing the babies. When he was finally called in, the long-awaited moment turned into a nightmare. As he entered the room, he looked at the babies and turned pale. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the 3 little ones wrapped in blue blankets. Leticia, now awake, smiled with tears in her eyes. "They're ours, love." But Samuel stepped back, frowned, and his voice trembled. "Leticia, what did you do?" She didn't understand at first, thinking he was in shock from the birth, but she soon saw the terror on his face. Samuel's mother entered the room at that moment and froze upon seeing the babies. Her expression hardened and her eyes filled with rage. "This is an insult, a shame," she shouted. "You cheated on my son with some white man, didn't you? My grandchildren would never be born like this." Leticia tried to explain, but no one wanted to listen. The doctor tried to intervene, saying that genetics can be surprising, that there have been cases like this before, but it was all in vain. Samuel didn't say another word. He simply turned his back and left the room. Leticia, still in bed, felt a pain much worse than childbirth. It was the beginning of a nightmare she never imagined living. In the days that followed, visits stopped. None of Samuel's relatives returned to the hospital. She was discharged with the triplets in her arms, and no one came to pick her up. Desperate, She called Samuel dozens of times with no response, until, on the last attempt, she heard his voice for the first time since the birth. "I don't want anything to do with you. Those kids aren't mine. You're on your own." Letitia's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had always been honest, faithful. Samuel was the only man in her life. And now she was being called a traitor, an adulteress, all because of something she herself couldn't understand. She went to live with a distant aunt. In every street she walked, in every shop she entered, she noticed the judgmental looks. And whispers, "There goes the woman who had kids with another man. But look how white they are. She must have cheated." Letitia lived in silent exile. She cared for the triplets with all the love in the world, even amid poverty, hunger, and loneliness. And the more the boys grew, the more beautiful they became. Fair skin, straight blonde hair, and crystal blue eyes. But what stood out the most was their love for their mother. Even very young, they would hug Letitia lovingly and say every day, "Mommy, you are beautiful." And she cried from pain, from longing, from fear, but also cried with gratitude for having those angels in her life. She just didn't know that fate was preparing something no one could ever imagine, and that in a few years, the whole world would know the truth. If you've watched this far, write in the comments, "I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person," or tell us which city you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe now to the Historias do Branco channel. Leave a like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. In the next part, you'll find out what happened when a genetic detail was revealed and how this story became national news. Don't miss it. Time passed, and Letitia, despite all the difficulties, not only survived, she fought with all her strength. She worked however she could, baking cakes, doing laundry, cleaning homes, all to support the triplets, Lucas, Luan, and Levi. And despite the hardships, the boys grew up with a special light. By age 3, they had already charmed the neighborhood with their manners and intelligence. They spoke properly, knew their colors and numbers, and always walked holding their mother's hands. It was impossible not to get emotional seeing them say in unison, "Mommy, you're the best mommy in the world." Letitia carried that phrase in her. Heart like armor, it was her against the world. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Samuel lived in silence. He had distanced himself from everyone, including his own mother, Mrs. Jasira. Though he never admitted it, doubt gnawed at him inside. Yes, he convinced himself that Letitia had betrayed him, but there was something he couldn't explain. Letitia had never lied, never acted falsely, never seemed untrustworthy. And even stranger, the boys looked like him. Samuel hadn't seen the children since they were born, but once, while walking through the market, he saw 3 blonde boys helping a woman carry shopping bags. Even from afar, something inside him stirred. The way the middle boy smiled was identical to his own childhood smile, but he shook his head and forced himself to forget. On the other side of town, Letitia was fighting another battle. The boys had become targets of mean comments at school. "Did your mum steal you from some blonde woman? She's not your real mum, right?" Letitia suffered in silence. But one day, something changed the course of this story. During a routine visit to the health center, the pediatrician, Dr. Carla, a very experienced and compassionate professional, was enchanted by the triplets. Talking with Letitia, she noticed the mother's hidden pain and embarrassment. "Is everything okay, Letitia?" And for the first time, Letitia told the whole story. The doctor listened in silence and finally said, "That can be explained. There's a rare condition called partial albinism, or recessive genetic traits. If you and the children's father have European ancestry, even distant, it is absolutely possible for children with fair skin and light eyes to be born." Letitia's eyes widened. "But no one ever told me that. I didn't even know I had white ancestry." Dr. Carla explained that many black families in Brazil, especially after centuries of forced miscegenation, carry recessive European genes that can remain inactive for generations. until they suddenly manifest. With a simple genetic test we can confirm. Do you want to do it? Leticia felt her heart race. A hope she had buried began to rise again. She accepted, did the tests with the boys, and for the first time in years, she slept with a slightly lighter heart. The results came 2 weeks later, and the doctor could barely hold back her emotions. Leticia, the boys are your biological children, of course, and they are also the children of the man you told me about, Samuel. The DNA confirms it with 99% certainty. Leticia brought her hands to her mouth, tears running down her face. For years, she had been called a liar, an adulteress, a traitor, and now science finally proved what her heart had always known. She had done nothing wrong, but what to do with this information? Dr. Carla, touched by the story, offered, "Would you like me to reach out? I can find your husband, your old family. You need support." But Leticia, with dignity, declined. "If Samuel wants to know the truth, let him come. For 10 years he turned his back on me. I won't beg now." However, fate, always mysterious, had already begun to weave the threads of reunion. On the other side of the city, Samuel had made a decision. After so long without peace, he started seeing a therapist. In the sessions, everything came to the surface. The pain of separation, public humiliation, abandonment, silence, and, most of all, the doubt. Yes, doubt was a ghost that never let him sleep. The therapist, a direct woman with no sugarcoating, told him, "You need to know the truth, Samuel, whatever it is. Living in doubt is like living with an open wound that never heals." With the kind of courage only true suffering can bring, he decided. He tracked down the doctor who delivered the babies, went through hospital records, and a month later found Leticia's address. He hesitated for a few days, but the heart doesn't hesitate. One Saturday afternoon, he took a bus, carrying only an envelope. When he got off on a humble street in the outskirts, he was surprised by what he saw. 3 blonde boys were playing soccer in the street. When they saw him, they stopped. One of them looked at Samuel, and Samuel froze. It was like seeing his own childhood face reflected in a blue-eyed boy. Then, for the first time in 10 years, Leticia came out to the gate, and their eyes met. There were no screams or accusations, just a heavy silence, followed by a single tear rolling down Samuel's cheek. I don't know what to say," he whispered. Leticia took a deep breath, chest tight, and replied, "After 10 years, maybe the best thing is to listen." He handed her the envelope. Inside was the DNA result and a handwritten letter. "Leticia, if I could go back in time, I'd do everything differently. Today I know you never lied, never betrayed me, and I was weak. If you'll allow me, I'd like to meet my children, not to take anything from you, but to show them that their father made mistakes and wants to be better." Leticia closed her eyes. A whirlwind of emotions surged inside her. Then the boys ran up to her. "Mommy, who's that man?" She knelt, looked into their eyes. "He's your father, my loves, and he really wants to meet you." The oldest, Lucas, turned to Samuel and said something that completely disarmed him. "Hi, Dad. Do you want to play ball with us?" Samuel couldn't hold back the tears. He knelt to the ground and hugged the 3 of them tightly. It was as if 10 years of pain melted away in one single moment, and Leticia, for the first time in a decade, smiled with peace in her heart. But little did they know, fate still had a twist in store that no one could ever imagine. If you've watched until now, write in the comments, "I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person," or tell us where you're watching from. And of course, subscribe now to the channel, leave your like and share this video with someone who needs hope. In the next part, you'll find out what happened when the story of the triplets went viral on social media and how it changed the family's life forever. That night after the reunion, Leticia could hardly sleep, not out of sadness, but due to a different kind of restlessness. The emotion of seeing her children smiling beside their father, even though she had learned to survive on her own, seeing the 3 boys holding hands with Samuel, was a kind of healing she didn't even know she needed. Samuel, in turn, returned home speechless. He felt as if he had broken a curse. For years he had carried anger, pain, shame, and now, for the first time, he felt hope. The next morning, he made a bold decision. He shared everything on his social media. He wrote an honest, emotional message, confessing his mistake, revealing the genetic discovery, and speaking about the reunion with his children. "I judged my wife unfairly. I expelled the most honest woman I've ever met. I was a victim of prejudice and fear. But above all, I was a coward. Today, life has given me a second chance, and from now on, my mission is to honor this opportunity." The post spread quickly. Within a few hours, there were hundreds of shares, then thousands. People from all over the country began commenting, "You were brave to admit it. How many Letitias are out there suffering in silence? This story needs to be known." Then, a journalist from a major news outlet contacted Samuel. After confirming the facts, she published the article, "Mother is expelled after giving birth to white triplets. 10 years later, husband discovers the truth and reunites with his children." The article went viral. TV programs began competing for interviews and invited Letitia to tell her story live. At first, she declined. She had always been discreet, reserved, but the boys were excited. "Mommy, we're going to be on TV," they said, laughing. That was when she decided if her story could help other women, other mothers, then yes, she would go. In the interview, sitting next to Samuel and the children, Letitia spoke from the heart. "I didn't come here for revenge. I came to show that the truth sooner or later comes to light, and even when everything seems lost, life can surprise you. But you must resist. You must keep your heart clean, even when the world is cruel." The host was moved. The audience gave a standing ovation, and the boys, with their shining blue eyes, hugged their mother live on air. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The public began to donate. Someone created an online fundraiser to help Letitia buy her own house. In just 2 days, more than 200,000 people contributed. Letitia received enough to leave her rented home, buy a comfortable house, furnish it as she had always dreamed, and still save for the children's future. But it didn't stop there. A publishing company contacted Letitia with a proposal to turn her story into a book. She accepted, and the book became a huge success. It made bestseller lists. In schools, teachers began using the case as an example in lessons about genetics, prejudice, and resilience. Letitia was invited to give talks, to share her story at universities, events, churches, and with her sweet voice, she always said, "What saved me was not revenge nor pride, but the love for my children and the certainty that the truth never dies." Meanwhile, Samuel continued his journey of redemption. He didn't want applause or fame. He just wanted to make up for lost time. "Can I take the boys to school? Can I make breakfast today?" These small gestures became routine, and little by little, he regained something far more valuable than any public forgiveness, the trust of his children and Letitia's respect. One night, while putting them to bed, Samuel heard something that made him cry in the hallway. "Daddy, we love you. Even if you took a while, now you're here." Letitia heard it from the bedroom and smiled, moved. However, there was someone who had not yet appeared, someone who had played a decisive role in the beginning of the tragedy. Donna Jacira, Samuel's mother. All that time, she had remained silent. She hadn't looked for Letitia nor her grandchildren, but after seeing the story's impact on TV, something changed inside her. Proud? Yes. Regretful? Even more. She couldn't stop looking at the boys' photos. They looked like angels. And even though they looked nothing like her, there was a connection in their gaze, in their gestures, in their smiles. Then, without warning, she knocked on the door of Letitia's new home. When the door opened, the scene was silent. Letitia standing still, the boys behind her, curious. And Donna Jacira, head bowed. "I came to see my grandchildren, if you'll allow me. And I came to ask for forgiveness." Leticia took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come, and even though the memories were still painful, she knew forgiveness sets you free. They deserve to know who their grandmother is, but now, Donna Hasira, I'm the one who sets the rules. Jasira nodded, and that same day she met her grandchildren for the first time. Levi, the most playful, jumped into her lap without hesitation. "Are you Grandma? You look like my mom." Jasira cried for the first time in many years. That boy with golden hair and blue eyes calling her Grandma was everything she needed to understand. Love has no color. It has truth. It has presence. It has the courage to acknowledge mistakes. And that day, the family torn apart by judgment and prejudice began to rebuild. But destiny, as always, still had one last revelation, one that would change everything again. A family secret, buried for over 30 years, was about to come to light. You won't believe what's coming next. If you've stayed with us this far, write in the comments, "I'm committed to the truth and to always being a better person." Or tell us from which city you're watching this video. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button now and join our community of people who value real and moving stories here at Historias do Branco. In the next part, get ready for a bombshell revelation that will change everything you thought you knew about Leticia and Samuel's past. After months of reconciliation, forgiveness, and new beginnings, Leticia and Samuel's life seemed to finally be back on track. The boys were happy, settled into their new home, the new routine, and especially into their father, who now made a point to be present in every moment. Donna Hachira's visits became more frequent, though still surrounded by a certain formality. She was gently trying to earn her grandchildren's love, and at the same time, gradually regain the trust of the daughter-in-law she had once hurt. One Sunday, while going through an old trunk of memories in the room of Samuel's, late grandmother Jasira found something unexpected, an aged envelope with her mother's shaky handwriting. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a letter, and along with it, a decades-old genetic test. Jasira began to read, and as the words unfolded, her eyes widened in astonishment. It changed everything. It was the revelation of a secret kept for over 30 years. Jasira's mother had once had a relationship with an albino, European immigrant from the Balkans. The man disappeared soon after their encounter, and out of fear of scandal, she hid everything, including the origin of Samuel's grandfather. In other words, Samuel carried in his blood a rare genetic inheritance that could explain the birth of the white-skinned, blue-eyed triplets. Jasira was in shock. For all those years, she had accused Leticia of infidelity, destroyed her life, without knowing that the stranger was, in fact, part of their own bloodline. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and called Samuel. "Son, we need to talk now." That afternoon, Jasira handed him the letter and documents. Samuel read in silence. With each line, his eyes filled with tears. "So all this was because of me?" "Yes, my son. And I was blind, proud. I thought I knew my mother, thought I knew where we came from, but the truth is, we don't always know our own story." Samuel got up, left the house, and drove to Leticia's with the envelope in hand. She received him on the porch. "What is it now, Samuel?" "Something that will shock you, and that I should have discovered 10 years ago." Handed her the envelope, Leticia read. Silence. Her heart raced. The pain from everything she'd endured came flooding back, and now it all made more sense. "So, this was all because of you. That gene was in you and no one ever knew." "Yes, Leticia. My grandmother had a relationship with a European albino man. It was never told. Not even my mother knew until she found the letter yesterday. This changes everything." Leticia closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. "No, this doesn't change everything. It changes you, Samuel. It changes your view. But my story, my pain, My struggle as a single mother for 10 years, that still hurts. I know, and I don't expect you to forget. I just needed you to know. Now I understand why the boys were born like that. And I understand how ignorant, blind and unfair I was. She stared at him. And what do you plan to do with this? Tell the world, not to clear my name, but to show that ignorance destroys and that one must investigate before judging. And so he did. Samuel posted a new message on social media, accompanied by the image of the old test and his grandmother's letter. The impact was enormous. Once again, the public was moved. But this time, it wasn't just about a family reunion. It was a story about roots, about what lies hidden in each of our family lines, and how it can change lives. Samuel began receiving invitations to speak about fatherhood, emotional responsibility, and humility. He didn't refuse. He always took the boys with him, spoke of the past sincerely, without hiding his failures. Leticia, meanwhile, was also writing her book, and the chapter about genetic heritage would become one of the most read and discussed of the entire work. But then, a new surprise. A lawyer contacted Leticia saying he represented an international firm that had identified an inheritance left by the European man with whom Samuel's grandmother had had a relationship. Yes, the biological father of Samuel's grandfather had left behind assets and blocked accounts in Europe, with no recognized direct heirs. Now, with the genetic test and the revealed story, the triplets were legitimate heirs. Leticia froze. You're saying, my children have the right to an inheritance? From where? From a small village in Serbia. A very reserved man who worked in agriculture and slowly acquired properties and savings accounts that over time appreciated significantly. And how much is it worth? With interest and adjustments about $400,000. Leticia nearly fainted. From an unjustly expelled, humiliated woman with no home to the mother of 3 millionaire heirs. But unlike stories where money brings ruin, in this case it brought healing. Leticia didn't change her ways. She kept her feet on the ground, invested in her children's future, and bought a small plot of land where she built a community center in her name, offering support for single mothers and free tutoring classes. If my pain can become a bridge for other women, then it wasn't in vain, she always said. Samuel, in turn, saw in his sons more than a reflection of a past mistake. He saw the chance to build a different legacy. He started filming videos with the boys, sharing family routines and telling inspiring stories. The channel quickly gained followers. The most touching part was the name the boys chose, 3 Lights of Love. In the first video, they smiled and said, "We look different on the outside, but inside we have the same heart as Mommy and Daddy." Leticia appeared at the end, tears in her eyes, and declared, "I was rejected, humiliated, but I didn't give up, because I knew that sooner or later the truth would come." And it came, in the form of 3 angels with blue eyes. If you've made it this far, write in the comments. The truth might take time, but it always arrives. I'm here for it. Now imagine building your entire life on the rubble of pain, and just when it all seems to be finally in balance, someone from the past reappears, bringing answers no one ever imagined. It was a sunny afternoon at the community center. Leticia was leading a support circle for young mothers, speaking about self-esteem, resilience, and real motherhood. The children played in the background playground. The place was joyful, colorful, vibrant, the opposite of the loneliness Leticia once knew. At the end of the talk, an older woman sitting at the back of the room slowly approached. She had light eyes and wore a green headscarf. She walked with slight difficulty, but her gaze was steady. Leticia smiled, as she always did with everyone. "Good afternoon, Ma'am. Did you enjoy the session?" The woman gently held her hand. "More than enjoyed. I needed to be here. For years, I've been looking for the courage to do this. And today, after seeing your children in the video online, I was sure they have my blood." Letitia froze. "What do you mean, Mom? Do you know me?" The woman took a deep breath. Her eyes sparkled. "My name is Elka. I was born in the former Yugoslavia. I was briefly married to a man named Mirko. He came to Brazil after the war, trying to start over, but he carried many traumas. We were together for 2 years. I had a child with him, but he disappeared, vanished from the world." Letitia frowned. "And what does that have to do with me?" "Everything. Because the child I had was named Andre, and he is the grandfather of your children." Letitia staggered. She had to sit down. "What are you saying, Mom?" "I'm saying that I'm part of their family. Yes, my dear, I am the great-grandmother of your triplets." Silence took over the space. Elka continued. "I spent years searching for traces of Andre. He grew up angry, left the country, and I never saw him again. I only heard that he had come to South America. Recently, a friend sent me a video from your channel, and when I saw your children's eyes, my heart knew. I recognized them." Letitia was breathing heavily. It was still a lot to take in. "And what do you want now?" "I want to meet the boys, to tell them who their great-grandfather was, and also to ask for forgiveness for not being able to be the mother I wanted to be to my son. Maybe by being their great-grandmother, I can finally get it right." Letitia observed the woman. The emotion was genuine. Her voice trembled, but there was no lie. That afternoon, sitting on the wooden bench in the community garden, Elka met the 3 children. She told stories of her homeland, spoke of the snow, and sang old songs she used to sing to Andre when he was little. The boys were enchanted. "Grandma Elka, sing one of those songs for us?" She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, let a tear fall. Not from sadness, but from relief. Letitia watched the scene with her heart full. It was as if the universe was closing its cycles. The answers she had always sought were there, right in front of her eyes. Samuel arrived shortly after and was in shock when he saw the elderly woman. Elka calmly repeated her story. Samuel listened in silence, eyes brimming with tears. "So my children's blood comes from you too?" "Yes, my son. They carry the strength of a people who survived wars, invasions and losses, and also the sweetness of a mother who never gave up." Samuel knelt beside her and held her hands. "You are welcome in our family. You always have been." From that day forward, Elka began visiting the community center every week. She became a kind of storyteller for the children in the community. She talked about the past, resilience, forgiveness, and taught words from the language spoken in her homeland. One day, Elka asked for a special favor. "I want the boys to know the land part of them came from. I want to take them to my village, to show them the mountains where I grew up." Letitia. And Samuel talked and decided to accept. The trip would be funded by the inheritance the boys had received, but more than that, it would be a journey into their roots. On the eve of the trip, Elka pulled Letitia aside. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." "When I had my son, Andrej, he was born with 2-toned eyes, one very light blue and the other greenish. He was beautiful and special, but at the time, people saw it as a curse. I was expelled from my village." Letitia's eyes widened. "You were expelled too?" "Yes, for giving birth to something that didn't fit. That's why, my daughter, when I saw your story, I knew I needed to find you." The two hugged, 2 women from such different worlds, united by the same pain and now the same healing. On the day of the trip, the whole village came to the airport to say goodbye. Posters with supportive messages, children with flowers. Letitia, Samuel, the boys and Elka boarded with full hearts. On the other side of the ocean, they would be welcomed with celebration, traditions, and a new surprise, because destiny had not yet finished its work. And in part 6, you'll discover something buried in Elka's past, a diary lost for over 40 years that holds a revelation capable of turning the family's story upside down. If you've followed the story this far, write in the comments. I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person. and tell us where you're watching from so we can connect even more. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the Historias do Branco channel and share this story with someone who needs to believe in the power of reconciliation. Think, what if the past that hurt you also held the path to your redemption? What if the most rejected heart actually carried the key to an entire lineage of resilience? When the plane landed in Elka's old village in the mountainous region of the Balkans, everything looked like something out of a fairy tale. Stone houses with red roofs, children playing in the streets, and the strong smell of baked bread with herbs in the air. The triplets were amazed. It was a completely different world than they knew. Letitia held her son's hands tightly, moved. Samuel proudly filmed everything. Elka was welcomed with flowers and songs. Some people got emotional upon seeing her. It had been 40 years since she had left that village. She cried upon reuniting with her younger sister, Olga, now a woman with white hair and gentle eyes. "You came back, Elka, and with your family." On the second day, an unexpected surprise. While exploring the basement of the house where Elka was born, one of the triplets, Lucas, found something curious under a loose floorboard. "Mom, Dad, Grandma, there's a little box here." It was a small iron box, rusted by time, but still tied with an old faded ribbon. Elka brought her hands to her mouth, eyes wide. "My God, I hid this before I fled. I thought I'd never find it again." Inside the box was a leather diary with yellowed pages. It was Elka's diary, written during the time she was pregnant with Andrei. Letitia began to read aloud. "Today, I felt my baby's first kick. I feel he will be special, but everyone around me is afraid. They say what I carry is unnatural, that the love I lived with Mirko was an affront to pure blood. But my child has the right to be born, and I will protect him, even if I have to disappear from the world." Samuel squinted, holding back tears. The children watched in silence, as if listening to a magical legend. Suddenly, Elka interrupted the reading. "Wait, there's more. There's a letter here. I never finished this letter. It was for my son in case I died." The letter read, "My son, if you ever find this, know that I never stopped loving you. I fled because they wanted to take you from me. They wanted to erase you, but you are light. And if you ever have children, I will love them too, even from afar." Letitia was crying heavily. "This story repeated itself, Elka. I was expelled too. They said my children were too white, that it was impossible for black love to generate blue eyes." Elka held her hand. "You see, you are living proof that love transcends color, prejudice, and ignorance." In the following days, the village celebrated the arrival of the triplets. They were baptized in an ancestral water spring as part of the local tradition. The ritual was symbolic, a recognition of belonging. On the final night, around the bonfire, Olga pulled Letitia and Samuel aside. "There's something you need to know, and perhaps only now is the right time to tell." She brought an old envelope. Inside was a birth certificate and a photograph. It was Andrei's birth certificate, and next to it, a picture of him as a young man, with an impressive detail. His eyes were exactly like the triplets. Letitia stood still. "There's no denying anything anymore. Everything fits." But Olga had more to reveal. "Andrei didn't die." "What do you mean?" "He disappeared years after arriving in Brazil. Vanished without a trace. But 2 months ago, someone using his name was treated at a rehab clinic in São Paulo. Disoriented, without documents, but repeating one phrase constantly, 'My eyes live in 3 sons.'" Letitia and Samuel exchanged looks. 3 sons, triplets, you have to go there." The return trip to Brazil was silent, introspective. Everyone felt something greater was about to happen, a reunion of stories separated by decades. At the clinic, they were greeted by a social worker who confirmed the presence of a man undergoing treatment with partial amnesia. He was found living on the street. He only said one name, Andrei, and he kept drawing blue eyes on everything. Letitia, heart pounding, held her children's hands tightly. Can we see him? The worker nodded and led them to a garden in the back. There, in a wooden chair, sitting with his back turned, was a man with greying hair and a distant look in his eyes. When the boys approached, he turned his face, his eyes fixed on theirs, and for a moment he whispered, "3 sons. You?" Samuel took a step forward. "Are you Andre?" The man slowly nodded. Leticia swallowed hard. "I'm Leticia. This is my family, and these are your grandchildren." Andre brought his hands to his face, crying silently. The social worker approached with a notebook. "He wrote something this morning, not knowing you would come." In the notebook, there was only one sentence. "The light of truth always finds its way back." Emotion overwhelmed everyone. The past was reconciling with the present. The scars were beginning to turn into bridges, and what would come next was something no one expected. If you've read this far, write in the comments, "I'm committed to the truth and to always being a better person," and tell us where you're watching from. Your presence here makes all the difference to us. Have you ever wondered what happens when the truth, after years of hiding, finally finds space to shine? Leticia, Samuel, Elka, and the triplets were there in front of Andre, the man who had been erased from his own story. I'm slowly remembering. The eyes of Elka. Now I see them in these children's eyes. Leticia hugged him, a silent hug full of tears and healing. Samuel also approached, moved, and said, "The pain of yesterday no longer defines who we are today. Thank you for fighting, even when everyone said it was impossible." In the following months, Andre gradually regained his autonomy, living with the triplets, who called him Grandpa with Sky Eyes, awakened dormant memories in him. But what no one expected was the social impact their story would begin to have. Leticia decided to tell everything publicly with the help of a documentary made by an independent filmmaker who had come across the story by chance at the clinic. The documentary would be called The Truth of the 3 Sons. Upon release, social media exploded. Thousands of people began sharing experiences of rejection, racism, and snap judgments based on appearance. Leticia received messages from mothers who were discredited because of the color of their children. "Thank you for giving us a voice, for showing that love has no skin tone, that genetics doesn't obey prejudice." Soon, the story crossed borders. International TV networks made reports about the case. Elka was invited back to the university from which she had been expelled in the past, but this time as an honored guest speaker. Before a full audience, she declared, "I was rejected for giving birth to a child who didn't match what they expected of me. But today, I see that my grandson and great-grandsons are the most powerful answer to ignorance." That same day, a student approached Leticia. "You don't know me, but I tried to take my own life 3 months ago. They said I wasn't worthy because I was adopted and different from my family. But your story saved me." Leticia hugged her, eyes full of tears. "Never believe you are less. Your story is still being written, and it can be amazing." Meanwhile, the triplets began to be invited to interviews, campaigns, lectures. They were nicknamed the 3 Sons for their intense blue eyes and the light their smiles radiated. But something even stronger was coming. A group of genetics professors from a federal university proposed to study the family's case, with consent, to debunk myths about miscegenation and racial genetics in Brazil. The results surprised everyone. It was proven that Samuel and Leticia did carry recessive European genes, inherited from past generations, and that their union, through pure genetic chance, produced children with light features. The scientific explanation definitively unmasked the prejudice so many had faced. A news report ran the headline, "Triplets of Reconciliation, When Science, Love, and Justice Meet." As a result, the school that had fired Leticia years earlier reached out, not to judge her, but to invite her to be director of a new racial inclusion project. I can't erase what you put me through, but I can turn this place into a beacon for those who come after me." She accepted. 1 year later, the school that once humiliated her became a national model in anti-discrimination practices. The project Eyes of All Shades, led by Leticia and her children, began operating in communities across the country. Samuel started an NGO that offered legal support to parents unfairly accused based on their children's appearance. Love Without Judgment was its name. Elka's village, back in the Balkans, became a tourist destination for a curious reason. A mural painted by an anonymous artist showed the faces of Elka, Andre, Leticia, and the triplets, with a phrase written in 12 languages: "Wherever there is prejudice, let love be born with even more strength." Andre lived his final years alongside his daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren. On Sundays, he played piano with the boys and smiled with a look of peace he had never had before. On his gravestone, when he passed, it read, "He fought for love, and love won." Leticia, now respected, recognized, and loved, never forgot the pain of the past, but she understood that even pain can blossom into something greater if you have the courage to keep going, even when everything seems to fall apart. She looked at her children one ordinary afternoon, smiling, and said, "You are living proof that the truth always finds its way, even if it takes 10 years. If you watched until the end, say in the comments, "I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person," or tell us from which city you're watching. Your presence here makes all the difference to us. And remember, never judge someone by their appearance. You may be facing a miracle the world has yet to understand. If this story touched you, subscribe to the Historias do Branco channel, leave a like, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and click one of the recommended videos on the screen. Because if this story already moved you, what you'll see next may transform you from within. Thank you for staying with us until the end. See you in the next story. And remember, love is always the answer.